Welcome back to another day at McDaniel Motorsports. So today we are assembling the steering, the rear drum brakes, and torsion bars. So I've got my tie rods all assembled, freshly painted with the Zerks. I don't have any reference as to what my old ones were. I really don't care because the car's been sitting for so long, who knows. So I just guessed. I typically start out with just a little over more than halfway inside the sleeve there. This is a starting point. The pins here are cotter pins, and let's see, there's one more. So 4 cotter pins, 4 nuts for all these guys. I think it looks pretty good. We did these in semi. That's what my legend calls for. As what the factory did. I'm sure some of you will disagree. It's highly debatable, but that's fine. This is what I had. So, but I'm gonna install these freshly powder coated, and these guys, believe it or not, have like there's an L. I don't know if you could see it right there. This is the driver's side. So L. I guess it's 65. I don't have my glasses on, but there's an L there. And then this one is all boogered up. Can't see anything on that side. Let's see if there's anything on this guy. I don't think it matters front to rear. Now here we go. So these are 778 bars, torsion bars. The car was born as a 383 2-barrel car, so it's a big block. So these are big block torsion bars, obviously. But I am going to reinstall these. So the question is, do I use grease or anti-sneeze? I'm going to go with the anti-seize. But I'm going to try to fit them in there, see how snug of a fit is. I'm not sure if I'm going to have to remove some of this powder coating. I might, but we'll see. So here we go. This box is a lot smaller than the stock box. That thing is huge compared to this. The stock bolts take a 12 point. I'm guessing so the average guy couldn't mess with it. That's probably how they kept their customers coming back to the dealer, because not many people had 12 points back then. I don't know. I could see them doing that just to keep them coming back for service, I suppose. Factory lock washers here too. Make sure this thing stays together. I've been faced with a bit of a moral dilemma when I've been restoring the parts for this car, like the hardware and stuff. Finding a lot of the new parts that I'm buying come with hardware, like for instance the Wilwood brakes, and they furnish all of the hardware for that brake kit that basically replaces the stock hardware. Well, I already restored the stock hardware, and so I really try to use it. So it's, you know, do I use brand new hardware from Wilwood, and you know it's pretty good, or the stock OEM stuff? I think I'm going to stick with the OEM, even though it is 55 years old. It just seems like the right thing to do. probably wondering why I'm using a ratchet for this, and I always do because of when I'm installing new parts that have restored hardware. A impact driver would most likely tear up the paint on the fasteners, so I disassemble with the electric or pneumatic stuff, but I reassemble by hand. Always, only because, you know, you have to put your hand on it eventually anyway before you, unless you're torquing it, but you'd have to torque it by hand anyway, so. Bought these at PST thinking I was going to save some money, and I ended up ditching the stock lower control arm because I just don't like the design. It's basically just stamped steel, and the fact that you got to weld a piece onto the bottom to get them to stop twisting, and I just said screw it. I ordered some QA1s, so now my upper and lowers will match. Figured that would be smarter than saving a couple $100. It's just a better piece all overall. I did want to keep the stock concept of the suspension. In other words, I didn't want to do a coilover conversion, or I didn't even want to change the K-frame. I just don't care for that. I mean, it's cool, don't get me wrong, it's just not for me. In this build, it's not to say I won't at some point. This has been very expensive for me, as you can probably tell, and saving a little here and there. Urethane, which these upper joints are, it squeaks, and you got to put urethane grease on it, and this stuff is amazing. Doesn't wear out ever. It's like, I call it gorilla snot. Some of you NASCAR guys will probably recognize that from the glue that they glue the lug nuts onto the wheels of the NASCAR race cars is also referred to as gorilla snot. That's an actual glue. This is just grease, obviously. But they do that so the pit crew doesn't have to mess with the lug nuts. They just glue them to the face of the wheels, and then when it's time to put them on, they just jam them on. And they have those lug stems with the heads on them that keep them from cross-threading in a hurry. It's your NASCAR fun fact for the day. I'm sure you guys probably already knew that. Some of you didn't though, I hope. Okay, got my gorilla snot on. Ball joint, or I'm sorry, the pad for the bump stop is right here, so that indicates forward. So I'm on the passenger side right now. Throw these guys in. Put the eccentrics in too, which is the alignment bolts. Front one from the front forward, basically. I can't talk today. The front eccentric going backwards. It's as this way, basically, because the car goes that way. Not worried about where the eccentrics are landing right now. Once we get the nuts and washers back on and they're captured inside the grooves of the frame, they will move a lot better. The other big reason for using these upper control arms is that they add a ton of caster into the stock upper control arm, or in comparison to the stock upper control arm, which means a lot better return to center once you've turned the steering wheel and you continue to drive. You know how the steering wheel always returns to center automatically. You're going to get more of that with these upper control arms. And that was another swaying feature. So I am happy with that. I'll move to the next side. Grab you guys. Alright, so I've got my passenger side spindle here in clear. I had them blasted. These are supposed to be not painted from the factory, but as you can probably guess, they are going to rust. So I had them blasted and done in clear. It's a real honest look, I think. I mean, it's not perfect or anything, but it's got some scarring. But I think overall, it's a real honest look. I actually like it. Alternative is that cast coat iron stuff that we've been using for hardware and small pieces. That's a really close color to the clear. Yeah, I've got them side by side inside the for the pedals, and you can't even tell which is which, really. It's pretty cool. I thought there'd be more of a contrast, but it really isn't much. So I'm going to throw these bolts in here temporarily because the front brake caliper bracket goes over these guys. So I wanted to mention that, but the more important purpose here is to get this connected up with the upper control arm. That kind of gets it into place for us so we can work on it easier. Yeah, I'm really happy I went with the upper control arms. It always kind of bugged me. I decided to do the lower control arms after I had already bought the uppers, and as I shared earlier, I just didn't feel like it was the right move for this car. This thing's going to need a whole lot of suspension with the power and of course brakes too, and I've got that covered, but I just felt like it was the right thing to do. I mean, it just looks right. Let's see. That looks proper, in my opinion. Yeah, you can see how they built caster into this. control arm. If you look at the ball joint, see how it's kind of slightly tilted forward. That's where they added that caster. You can see the A-arm is like, the pivot points are almost like 45 degrees. And then the ball joint, you can see how they're kind of aligned forward. I don't know, maybe you can't see it from your perspective. But anyway, I'm happy I did it. Got the other side. So I've got my wheel wood caliper just kind of mocked up here. The bummer part is I spent a lot of time restoring this original hardware right here, and I wanted to use it. I planned on using it, but then I realized this plate is added on to the front of the spindle, and these bolts might work, but only because it only goes through this part of the spindle to the lower ball joint, but this one actually has to go through the braking plate, so they include one bolt. So I've got one bolt here that's galvanized. Not a fan. So I like matchy, as you probably could have told me. However, I don't know. I reserve the right to change my mind and change it. Which I might. I might just paint these new bolts the same color, just so they match. But I think the extra length forces me to use it. So there's that. I don't know, something about a front end needing to stay on the car, not fall off, that kind of thing. Here's another one of those type of nuts that has a indentation in the top. See that little square? That's actually a locking, not a device, but a locking mechanism. In fact, it's 1, 2, and 3. So good job, Willwood, for providing good hardware. But it's an interference fit type of deal, so eventually these things just cross thread and they don't work anymore. So I'm going to try not to tighten it and remove it and tighten it, because that's really what wears it out. But I'm just going to throw it on for now. It almost feels like it's cross threading already. And then the front ones take a cotter pin, for those of you who know these cars pretty well. But this is all exciting, getting this thing not wrapped up, but under its own suspension will be really cool. I can set the ride height. I'm going to put the torsion bars in here next, as soon as I get these brake caliper brackets worked out. But it's all very exciting. I'm looking forward to it. This is the fun part. So I'm going to assemble my rotor adapters. It says to use red Loctite. The only thing I use red Loctite on is ring gear bolts, and even then I use blue because I hate being married to that stuff. It sucks. Never had a bolt come off, and probably never will. These look like Allens, but they're not. They're actually Torx. And this is the Willwood disc brake kit that you're supposed to be able to use a 15-inch wheel, which is what I have. I hope it fits. It's always a surprise. These get torqued to 25 foot-pounds. Gotta get it before it dries. I did some of this in an earlier video just to get it rolling so I could bring it out to Arizona and paint it. So I already assembled the hubs and the bearings, or the inner and outer bearings rather. So I'm gonna do these guys. I never bothered to assemble the rotors because it just didn't make much sense at the time, and I was pressed for time, of course. So I'm gonna have to go back and torque those lug stems that are on the hubs already. But I want to show you guys this, how this goes. And the 6R brake pads are the big 6-piston calipers, but it all goes together the same according to the Willwood website. So I seem to have lost my directions, which is very irresponsible. And it says on the paper that it should be done by a qualified individual. Well, I'll let you know when I find them. Maybe I can get him to come by and torque some of this stuff for me. I can always tell when I'm getting close when my boxes start disappearing and the pile of parts is dwindling. It's a nice feeling, let me tell you. Buying stuff and then porting it for the car is very, very difficult at times. But you gotta do what you gotta do, right? One thing about Willwood is they always do impress me with their hardware and their fitment. They're not much to talk about over the phone. I don't know. I've gotten some attitude from some of the guys there, but overall the product is really good, in my opinion. I'm sure all the big boys make really good brakes. I've never had a pair of Bear brakes. They've always been like double the cost of Willwoods, and I'm a 15-inch wheel guy. I mean, there's guys that, I mean, if you run a bigger wheel on your car and you're cool with that, and it opens up so much opportunity to run a really nice set of brakes. But the downside is the cost. The cost is huge. It's like double. The bigger the brake, the more expensive it is, obviously. But I'm sure the braking power is amazing. But the look of the car to me is the most important. Obviously function is more important, but I'm not willing to run a bigger wheel on this car. I like 15s for this type of vehicle, but then again, I'm an old guy, so to each his own. Yeah, this thing's gonna stop really good. I'm gonna maintain, I think I mentioned it in the previous video, that I'm gonna maintain the drum brakes in the rear just because of the burnout capability, and I think I have enough stopping power in the front to be okay. So, we rehabbed the stock backing plates. I was kind of worried they were going to be ruined after I beat on them to get them off, and I didn't damage them beyond repair, so we were able to fix them and clean them up, put them on the car. So you'll see that installation video probably here pretty shortly. I'm gonna have my son, who's 22 years old, he's gonna assemble those brakes because I want him to know. He's got a set of drum brakes in the back of his pickup truck, and one of these days he's going to have to repair those. Most kids don't know what drum brakes are, much less how to put them together. So it's a life lesson. It's like being able to drive a manual transmission. If you can't drive a manual transmission, you're behind, we'll say. And there will be a point where there's a pretty girl needing to get somewhere and there's only a manual car to use. You really want to be that guy that can't drive a stick? Trust me, it happens. I remember faking it for this girlfriend I had I was like 16 at the time, and she was 19, and she was already weary of me because I was younger. And she's like, "Do you want to drive?" I'm like, "Sure." I didn't have my license. I had never driven a stick. And so I just jumped in and did it. It was pretty rough and embarrassing, but I did it. Now I have a funny story. And I enjoyed driving stick more than automatic, obviously. I mean, who doesn't? It's certainly not the fastest way there, but it's the most fun, let me tell you. When you practice on your friend's car, let him fix his clutch after you're done. Sorry, I just got distracted. I'm going back around these guys and making sure they're all torqued. Okay. I think we're good. And just make sure before. Alright, so I've got my hub or my rotor and hub adapter on. You can see it's on the back side there. And put it on this guy and rotate it around. There's a hub centric. Actually, these are not hub centric. They can go in any way you would like. Now we're going to install these guys. Just making sure they fit. These will get torqued to 45 foot-pounds. I already packed the bearings and installed the inner seal in a previous video. I'm going to just leave those alone. I think I did a pretty good job. Not worried about it. Not using too much grease. Don't really need to once you have a bearing packed. You don't need to glob a bunch in there like some people think you do. Just gets everywhere. And you don't want grease on your rotors, so that's all the Loctite I'm putting on there. That's it. Let's see if these are the same size or not. Nope, different size. Yeah, so these are T45. And again, I know I've mentioned this before, but when you're using Loctite, it has a lifespan. Once you put it on and it dries, you need to reapply it. And once you take a fastener off that's already been treated with Loctite and tightens, you need to clean it up with contact cleaner and treat it again. So 45 foot-pounds. Hopefully I can do this by holding it. I have my doubts. Just don't want to round off the thread, or not thread, but the head of the bolt without be able to hold it in. All right, well, how can I do this? Man, that's light. That is really light. You could not go to an auto parts store and buy a hub that's even half this weight. It's, you get what you pay for with these guys. It's pretty impressive. I'm impressed. You might not be, but I am. Of course, I'm the one that spent the money, so yeah. All right, so how can I do this? Let's set to 45. Let me think about this for a sec. All right, so I think I figured it out. I have my soft jaws in here. Alright, so this is the wrong way. This is the way I told you to do it. It's not the right way. So here's the right way. So if you notice between the two, there's a very slight difference. The rotor and the offset cap, which is this guy here, are flipped. And I was having, when I mocked this guy up yesterday, just to, I like to mock everything up before I tighten anything. I'm glad I did, because this is wrong and it was interfering. The threads from these bolts are sticking out and they're interfering with the bolts on the caliper and the ball joint bracket there. So this is the way. So look, it's easier to see it, the difference in this regard. This is correct, that's wrong. So basically I had this guy on the wrong side and this guy was flipped, so the heads of the bolts will be on the back side as opposed to the threads sticking through. So hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, now you know. And Loctite your stuff and torque it. Give me a sec, I'll be right back. So before we get into the torsion bars, I wanted to make a note. So I called, excuse me, I got a Borgeson box, obviously, down there. It's installed. And my pump came at a later date. So when I received my pump, the type of pump is a Saginaw pump, which is this guy here. So this is obviously not stock to the vehicle, and the mounting holes are right here, basically in the front. Whereas I think it's called a Liberty. They consider the one that came with the car that has a different style reservoir. It's like has an iron cap on the top of it. I think it's Liberty. And correct me if I'm wrong, you Mopar guys. But that's the style that came with the car. He said, the guy at Mancini Racing told me, he's like, those are really hard to find. There's really no performance advantage to having a Liberty pump. In fact, he thought there's more of a performance advantage with the CVF Saginaw, which is what I'm going to use. So I asked him, I go, can I find one of those Liberties? And he's like, no, they're really tough. So I just said, screw it, I'm going to use a Saginaw pump. So, which led me to think, okay, so I'm going to run air conditioning. The car was actually born as an air conditioning car, so it should have, it had one of those twin cylinder original air conditioning compressors, which I have. I'm not going to use it because I don't want to deal with having it rebuilt, and they're super chunky. It's probably 30 pounds. So I opted to get a Sandin, a bracket for a Sandin 508 air conditioning compressor, which will go around in this area here. So I'm getting a bracket for that. And then I wanted to order a top alternator bracket for this side, and he only sells the whole kit. So I'm like, fine, it's 45 bucks. In the realm of charger, that's pretty cheap. So I just said, screw it. They don't sell it separately. So I went ahead and ordered the alternator bracket also. and an alternator. And my question to him about the alternator was, can I go away or get away from this silly Chrysler charging system that everyone seems to have fits with basically the alternator you can get for this car either is an internal regulated alternator or an external regulated alternator. And he said most of them, the squarebacks, are externally regulated. So my next question to him, and I'm just throwing this out there for you guys that might come across the same thing. And I know those regulators are from overseas and they're highly unreliable. They just cause people to have fits. And I was trying to avoid that. Just like, it's kind of like choosing to run a single wire GM alternator on a Ford, for instance. And I just wanted to simplify it that way. The only thing he mentioned, you have to run a separate ground if you choose to do a round back alternator, and I'm like, that's not a big deal to me. But in the hopes of saving time, I just went with the externally regulated one and external regulator. So hopefully that works. I really wanted to try to bypass this whole, external thing, but it is what it is. So I just went along with it. So hopefully I don't regret that decision. And the alternator I got was just a regular. I don't want chrome. I'm not into chrome that much on engines, and I'm trying to stay pretty basic with this engine as far as accessories go. So I'm maintaining the V-belts. I did order a double pulley for the water pump, and the alternator will have a double pulley on it too, to alleviate some belt slipping. At least that's my mindset, in which I will do a double belt on the sand-in compressor as well. So anyway, I just thought I'd had you guys off at the pass and hopefully help somebody making these decisions. Being informed is always the best way, and let's face it, us car guys are always inundated with planning and financial woes, having to buy everything. If it's Charger or Chrysler related, it's always triple the cost. But they sure are sweet though, aren't they? So anyway, that's my 3 cents. Back to the torsion bars. And if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments, or whatever. I'm happy to share anything that we're doing with this car. That's the whole point of this channel, is to help you guys along as we go along. We're open book. So just let us know. Thanks. I just realized I don't have torsion bar boots. Can't do anything with that, so gotta order those. It happens. So I'm gonna do the tie rods real quick. When you're installing these things, you gotta make sure the ball joint goes into the actual tapered side of the hole. Just to verify it. Making sure the top is bigger than the bottom in this case, or is it bottom up? So yeah, so this is actually bottom up. So me not being a Chrysler guy, I could have very well done that wrong, and the joints wouldn't be seated. So interesting. Straight, no. So it's a full group. So this guy. Center link is upside down. That's why we mock everything up. Yep, sure is. I'm always so glad when this happens. Maybe I would have caught it when I tightened it up, but yeah, it's glad I caught it. So learn from me. link nuts. I hope you're impressed. These are the only two I have. Where they're the three-way, where they have a little three-star tassel on the top. So this is super weird. So this feels like, yeah, that's right. I think this joint in the end of my idler arm is just kind of tweaked. So it's not seating in properly. I'll grab a plastic hammer. Almost feels like someone drilled it out. It's a little tighter on the bottom. Why would this be maybe on the top on these tie rods? I should probably look in my service manual. That does not fit right. That fits right. So seems like it should go on the bottom. Of course, I'll make sure it tight, little lift. What are you doing? Sorry. Alright. Let me go grab the other tie rod. This 22-year-old man is assembling drum brakes. See the irony? For the second time? That's alright.
Second time.
That's how you learn. It's awesome. I love it. And you can drive a stick.
Sort of.
Manual. Alright. It's all done. This is just a sneak peek. Who's going to be in the next segment showing how to do this for the young kids that don't understand what this stuff is. This is burnout capability right here. That's what this is. It's inadequate braking equipment, but enabling burnout capability. So, what do you guys think about the long studs? I like them. I think they're pretty cool, but I might have to hack them. But I could get open-ended lug nuts with the Kragers. That'd be cool, I think. I don't know. It's coming together. Super happy.